Let me ask you something honest. When you think about retirement, what's the first feeling that shows up? For most people, and I mean most, it's not excitement, it's fear. It's that cold, creeping anxiety that whispers, what happens when the paychecks stop? Will I have enough? What if I outlive my money? And that fear is completely understandable. For decades, you've been told that retirement is where your financial life starts winding down. The income stops. The bills don't. The savings drain. And one day, if you're not careful, you find yourself staring at an empty account wondering where it all went. That's the story they sold us. A story of decline, of scarcity, of clinging to what you have and praying it lasts. But here's what they didn't tell you. Here's the truth, that the Federal Reserve, yes, the actual Federal Reserve, uncovered in one of the most comprehensive financial surveys ever conducted in the United States. Most Americans actually get richer in the first 10 years of retirement. Not poorer, richer. Net worth, the real measure of wealth, doesn't collapse when the paycheck stops. For millions of retirees, it climbs, sometimes dramatically. How is that possible? That's exactly what we're about to unpack. Because once you understand why this happens, you won't just stop fearing retirement, you'll start treating it as the greatest financial opportunity of your life. The illusion of the paycheck. Let me tell you about a man I'll call Robert. Robert worked 32 years in corporate logistics. Every 2 weeks, a paycheck hit his bank account. It felt like oxygen. Like without it, he couldn't breathe financially. He had a mortgage, 2 car payments, a gym membership he barely used, subscriptions he'd forgotten about, and lunch out every day because who has time to cook when you're working 50-hour weeks? Robert was earning $95,000 a year, and every single month he spent $94,000 of it all. Not on luxuries, mind you, just on life, on the invisible cost of being a working person in America. You see, we forget something crucial. Working costs money, a lot of it. Think about your own life right now. How much do you spend just to go to work? There's the commute, gas, tolls, parking, or transit. There's the professional wardrobe, the suits, the shoes, the dry cleaning. There's the coffee you grab every morning because you're exhausted and you need it to function. There's the lunch out because there's no time to prep. The takeout on Wednesday nights because the week is brutal. The childcare or pet care because you can't be home. The outsourced house cleaning because your weekends need to be something other than chores. Add it all up. Studies show the average worker spends between $500 and $1,500 per month just on the cost of having a job. That's up to $18,000 a year gone, not on living your life, but on funding the act of going to work. When Robert retired at 67, something extraordinary happened. Almost overnight, $1,100 a month in expenses simply vanished. No commute, no dry cleaning, no daily coffee run, no rushed takeout dinners. He started cooking again, something he'd loved in his 20s but never had time for. He walked more, slept better, and without even trying, his monthly spending dropped by nearly a third. And here's the kicker. He didn't feel poorer. He felt free. That's the first secret most people miss. Retirement doesn't just cut your income, it cuts your expenses too, often by far more than you expect. But there's more to this story, because it's not just about spending less. It's about the steady rivers of income that keep flowing even after the paycheck disappears. Here's what happens to the average retiree financially that no one draws on a whiteboard in school. First, Social Security. As of 2025, the average monthly Social Security benefit for a retired worker is $1,955. That's nearly $23,500 a year, not from a job, not from savings, just arriving every single month, like clockwork. Now, I know some of you are rolling your eyes. $23,000? That's not life-changing. But combine it with a modest pension or distributions from a 401k that you've been building for 30 years, and suddenly the math looks very different. For many retirees, their monthly income from these combined sources actually exceeds what they were spending in their final working years. Not because they got rich overnight, but because their expenses dropped while their income streams held steady. And here's where it gets even more interesting, if you can wait. Every year you delay collecting Social Security past your full retirement age, up to age 70, your monthly benefit jumps by approximately 8%. 8% guaranteed by the federal government. Think about that. Where else in the financial world can you get a guaranteed, risk-free 8% annual return? Not in your savings account, not in most bonds, nowhere. If your full retirement age is 67 and you wait until 70 to claim, your Social Security payment jumps by 24%. That's not a small difference. Over a 20-year retirement, That decision alone could be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, sometimes over $100,000 in additional lifetime income just from waiting. Robert waited. And the extra $600 he receives because he was patient, that's his travel fund. Every summer, Robert and his wife go somewhere they'd spent decades saying, one day. Last year it was Portugal. This year, Japan. When your money finally stops working for you and starts working for you. Now here's the part of this story that almost no one talks about. The part that, once you understand it, makes retirement feel less like a finish line and more like a launch pad. For most of your working life, you were investing, putting money away, 401k, IRA, maybe a brokerage account. And yes, you were watching it grow, but you were also one step away from touching it, pulling from it, raiding it for the new roof, the kids' college, the unexpected medical bill. Something changes in retirement. When your income from Social Security, pensions, and part-time work covers your day-to-day expenses, you no longer have to touch your investments. And that's when the magic of compounding truly explodes. Let me give you a number that should stop you cold. The S&P 500 has returned an average of approximately 10% per year over the long term. If you have $500,000 invested and you don't touch it for 5 years, even without adding a single dollar, that $500,000 becomes roughly $805,000 based on historical averages. That's a $300,000 increase while you were doing nothing, while you were sleeping, while you were on your way to Portugal. This is exactly what the Federal Reserve Survey confirmed. Retirees who had built up their nest eggs and didn't need to drain them saw their wealth continue to grow organically. Their investment portfolios kept compounding. Their home values kept appreciating. Their net worth kept climbing. Robert checked his net worth 5 years into retirement. It was higher than the day he retired. Not by a little, by a lot. He couldn't believe it. He'd spent 5 years believing he was spending down, but the combination of disciplined spending, steady income, and continued market growth had actually added to his wealth. And Robert is not exceptional. He's not a Wall Street genius. He's not a tech billionaire. He's a man who packed boxes in a warehouse and worked his way into management over 30 years. He's you with a plan. Let's talk about something sitting right under most people's feet, sometimes literally, your house. For millions of Americans, their home is their single largest asset. And during your working years, that asset quietly, patiently, steadily appreciates. According to the Federal Housing Agency, U.S. home prices have historically appreciated at roughly 3 to 5% annually. But in the post-2020 era, many markets have seen far greater gains. Here's what that means for a retiree. If you bought a home in 1990 for $150,000 in a mid-size American city, that home is likely worth somewhere between $400,000 and $700,000 today, depending on where you live. Often, it's paid off. No mortgage, no monthly payment. Think about what that means. Owning your home outright in retirement is the financial equivalent of getting a massive raise because you've eliminated one of the biggest line items in most household budgets, the mortgage payment. That might be $1,500, $2,000, even $3,000 a month that simply disappears from your expenses column. And your home equity? That's pure tax-advantaged wealth sitting in your corner. Wealthy retirees understand this. Many choose to downsize, selling the family home that's too large now that the kids are gone, and pocketing $200,000, $300,000, even more in tax-free profit. That cash goes straight into income-generating investments, or it becomes the seed money for rental property, which brings us to one of the most powerful wealth-building moves available in retirement, the side hustle that doesn't feel like work. Here's a woman I'll call Patricia. Patricia spent 28 years as a high school English teacher. She retired at 64 with a modest pension, Social Security, and a small IRA. By most people's definitions, she was comfortable, not rich, just comfortable. 3 years into retirement, Patricia started something small. She'd always been a gifted writer, and a former colleague asked her to review and edit a small business newsletter. She charged $200. Then another business asked, then another. Within 18 months, Patricia was earning between $1,500 and $2,500 per month, doing something she genuinely enjoyed, something that felt nothing like a job, because she controlled every aspect of it. She worked when she wanted, she took December off, she
turn down projects that bored her. Patricia hadn't gone back to work. She'd converted 30 years of expertise into a passive adjacent income stream that required maybe 10 hours of effort per week. This is what financial experts call consulting or freelancing in your field. But for retirees, it's often something even more personal than that. It's the realization that decades of specialized knowledge are enormously valuable in the marketplace, and that you no longer have to sell that knowledge in 50-hour-week increments. You set your own price, your own schedule, your own terms, and the extra income stacked on top of Social Security and investment returns, that's the difference between comfortable and genuinely wealthy.
Let's have a grown-up conversation about taxes for a moment, because here's something that might change how you think about retirement income entirely. During your working years, your income was likely taxed at a relatively high rate, maybe 22%, 24%, or higher if you were a strong earner. Every raise you got, the government took a piece. In retirement, your tax situation often looks dramatically different. Social Security benefits are only partially taxable, and for lower-income retirees, sometimes not at all. Long-term capital gains from your investments are taxed at preferential rates, often 0 to 15%, far lower than ordinary income rates. Qualified dividends, same favorable treatment. Rich retirees don't stumble into this knowledge, they engineer it. They work with CPAs, certified financial planners, and estate planning attorneys to structure their retirement income in a way that minimizes taxes year after year. They do Roth conversions in low-income years. They harvest tax losses strategically. They donate appreciated stock to charity instead of cash, capturing a full deduction while avoiding capital gains. The result? They keep dramatically more of every dollar they earn. As Joe Cronin, president of International Citizens Insurance, puts it, proper tax management is critical. Wealthy retirees often work with advisors to optimize deductions, retirement withdrawals, and even international tax treaties to ensure they retain more of their wealth. When Robert finally sat down with a CFP in his second year of retirement, he discovered he'd been leaving roughly $8,000 a year in unnecessary taxes. $8,000 a year for years gone, simply because he didn't know what he didn't know. Don't be that person. The right financial team is not a luxury in retirement. It's an investment that pays for itself many times over. The mindset shift that changes everything. We've talked about numbers, about income streams and tax strategy and compound interest, but I want to talk about something deeper now, because here's what I've noticed about the retirees who truly flourish financially after leaving work. The ones who watch their net worth grow year after year. The ones who seem to move through retirement with an ease and confidence that most people only dream about. They made a fundamental shift in how they think about money. During their working years, their relationship with money was transactional. You trade your time for dollars, you spend those dollars to maintain your life, you do it again next week. Money was a river you stood in, always moving around you, always flowing through your hands, never quite building up. In retirement, the wealthy retirees flipped that relationship. They stopped thinking of themselves as earners and started thinking of themselves as owners. Owners of assets that generate income, owners of knowledge that commands consulting fees, owners of properties that collect rent, owners of portfolios that throw off dividends. They shifted from asking, how do I earn money, to asking, how do I make my money earn more money? And that single shift in perspective is worth more than any spreadsheet, any financial hack, any investment tip you'll ever receive. Because once you start thinking like an owner, every decision becomes different. You don't see your house as just a place to live. You see it as a capital asset. You don't see your 401k as a retirement account. You see it as a compounding engine. You don't see your career expertise as something that ended when you handed in your badge. You see it as intellectual capital that the market will pay handsomely for on your terms. This is the mindset of the wealthy retiree, and it's available to everyone. Here's what I want you to take away from everything we've talked about today. Retirement is not the beginning of the end. For those who approach it with intention, with curiosity, and with the right knowledge, retirement is the beginning of the most financially powerful chapter of their lives. Think about it. For the first time, perhaps in decades, your time is your own. Your biggest mandatory expenses, the commute, the wardrobe, the childcare, the mortgage, have shrunk or disappeared. The government sends you a monthly check for the taxes you paid for 40 years. Your investments, no longer under constant threat of being raided for emergencies, are finally free to compound uninterrupted. Your home, your steadiest and most patient asset, has likely grown into something that astonishes even you. And the wisdom wisdom you've accumulated, the skills, the relationships, the domain expertise no one can take from you. The world will pay for those. The Federal Reserve confirmed it. The numbers prove it. And Robert and Patricia and millions of people just like them are living it every single day. The fear they sold you about retirement was real, but it was also wrong. The truth is this: retirement, done right, isn't where wealth ends. It's where wealth finally begins. So the question isn't whether you can get richer in retirement. The question is, are you going to be ready? Start now. Build the income streams. Reduce the expenses you don't need. Learn the tax code that works in your favor. Talk to the advisors who can show you the angles you're missing. Delay your Social Security if you can afford to. Let your investments breathe. And most importantly, change the story you tell yourself about what retirement means. Because the people who got richer after they stopped working, they didn't do it by accident. They did it because they finally stopped letting fear make their financial decisions. And they started letting knowledge lead instead. The paychecks stopped, but the wealth was just getting started.